2021. And it looks like we have a presentation on the egg dash mash and crash. Do you want to start? Thank you for coming.
Yeah, we can start.
Great.
Want to introduce yourselves too? Just
I think I turned it on. Is it? Are we on?
Yep.
All right. Okay. Well, I am Gregson. You think it's just for me?
Yeah, for the video.
It's for the video.
Sorry.
It's not for the room.
So you don't have
you're
to lean
okay.
into it.
Oh. All right. Sorry.
I do the same thing all the time.
You should see me at our presentation. Anyways, I'm Greg Snow. I teach 6th grade. And this is
Samian Zabadi, also teach 6th grade right across the hall. We are kind of each other's counterparts curriculum-wise. Yeah. So, you go.
I'm going to lean on Sam. My voice is struggling today, so I'll do my best. I'll probably run out of gas, but Sam and I we submitted our egg dash mash and crash to the NSTA, National Science Teachers Association, for their semi-annual conference. It was selected. It was selected in 2019 to be presented in 2020, but it was in March when everyone went to way. We were also selected in 2018 for our science fair as well. And for me, being selected isn't necessarily about the notoriety for yourself, but what you're doing. And I say everything I say can only be done because of the buy-in from the kids. The kids buy in, and they are fantastic. If you don't mind, we presented this. This was a 1-hour presentation, which we'll condense it down to 10 minutes. So we went to New Orleans. It was about 2 weeks ago to present it to the multitudes. We presented it as an alternative to the traditional egg drop. When I was hired in 2002, I came here, and Tim O'Connell said, he was the science teacher. He was where Sam is. He said to me, if my 6th graders love science when they come to 6th grade, I want them to love it when they leave, or continue to love it. And conversely, if my 6th graders come and they don't love science in 6th grade, by the time they leave, I want them to love it. And so that has kind of been the driving force behind everything for the last 23 years. So when I came here, to back up even further, Pamela Ireland, I think her name was, when she was a 6th grade teacher, she started a science fair and a egg drop at CS, it would have been here at the Brookline Elementary School, which can carry over to CSDA. And Mr. O'Connell did the same. And so when I came, my first 4 years, I kind of played Robin to his Batman. And so we did a very traditional egg drop where myself or the custodian or Tim, we would go to the roof and we would drop these egg capsules. We have one, if you don't mind, if you could show. These young ladies are old, they're in their 30s now. So they're older than half of our staff. I don't even know how to reach whatever. I don't know how to even reach out to them. But anyways, those were your traditional, capsules. Those were the best ones, right? So we went through this egg drop, and I felt like we could always do a little bit more. And if you could back up, I won't mention names, but I had a student around 08-ish. He showed up, I'm pretty sure, I'm almost certain, he stopped at the Dunkin' Donuts. This is after a month of work, right? A month of prototyping. Stopped at the Dunkin' Donuts on the way, went into the restroom, got some toilet paper, got a hot chocolate, a lid, and some rubber bands, and he showed up with his egg, once was the work with a egg drop capsule that was a Dunkin' Donuts cup, rubber banded with toilet paper inside and an egg. And the worst part was, it survived. Right? So I was apparently, Mrs. Noah had given me a Connect set at that time, and that was the thing that kind of pushed me to go. We got to go. It's got to be more than this. It can't just be prototyping and trying to get the kids ready for the science fair. So you do a little research and you realize you can build these rubber band cars with these connects, and that's why we wanted to actually show you what the kids do. And so all of these cars are like iterations over the years. I think the cars that Mrs. Belay and Mr. Molinari and Mrs. Bergskog have are the ones that everyone has.
The current cars.
The current cars. And what I wanted to just show you is, if you have a car, if you want to try this, if you there's a rubber band. Okay, so all the cars are powered with elastic potential energy. If you grab a car, and you can grab one rubber band if you want, or two, and we don't give any kid more than 2 rubber bands. And you have to have a conversation with him about the appropriate use of rubber bands. But if you there's a clip on the rear axle, and so if you don't mind, you can grab it and you put it and you just wind it. Okay, or you wind it.
Make sure you're winding.
You can usually get about 5 or 6 windings.
If you wind them forwards, you'll flip.
And it doesn't matter if you wind them backwards.
Yep, just like that, and you can spin it by the tire.
But if you release them,
Yep.
There we go. Oh,
if you release them, the cars will move.
So right in the middle, so.
And so we focus as our life science, I'm sorry, our physical science. It's all about the transfer of
There you go.
potential energy, elastic potential energy to kinetic / thermal energy. We love, that's essentially the basis of it. The kids, through the generosity of our PTO, if you remember during COVID, we were not able to congregate and have a science fair. So our Egg Dash, Smash, and Crash became a culminating activity. And our PTO wanted for those students who were remotely learning to have a hands-on experience off of a screen and perhaps even come into the school and participate. So they, we weren't traveling for field trips, so they took the money that they would have normally spent on field trips, and we were able to purchase enough. It was really, we had no connects, but it was the tires that they really helped us with, so that now every student builds their car, builds the same car, and I'll let Sam take over as we prepare them for the Egg Dash, Smash, and Crash. So.
Yep. So what we do leading up to the Egg Dash, Smash, and Crash is we do a series of investigations with the cars that you 3 have, our current control cars. We investigate Newton's laws of motions with the cars. So much of this is ELA based as well. So we get to rope in a lot of our ELA standards into the science, into the Egg Dash as well. So we start, everything usually lines up pretty well, that we have build days right before Christmas break. So it's a great hands-on thing before Christmas break. We can spend a few days building, and Greg Mosley has made these step-by-step instructions on how to put the connects together so that we all have the exact same cars as our controls for the building pieces of it. So
This is their mind the week before Christmas.
yes, this is where they're at. This is the highest we can get from the week before Christmas. So right now we have each investigation on about a 6-day cycle. We teach science about 2 to 3 days a week right now because we split time with social studies. The goal is to get it down to a 5-day cycle so that we can do a week's worth of science and then a week of social studies and then flip back and forth that way. We haven't quite made it there yet. What's been really great is our partners have allowed us to kind of take over writing time the past couple of years to work on the expository writing and the informative writing, which are 6th grade ELA standards during the writing block. This is going to look a little different this year with our new Amplify program, but there's flex days built into the Amplify program, which we're kind of hoping will line up nicely so that we can still use writing time during ELA to work on our writing for this, because if not, we only have about 40 minutes for science, and it's going to be quite the cram to cut a day off. So the first investigation, I'm only going to go through one because there's a lot, but the first investigation we're doing is how does the weight the racer is carrying affect the displacement of the vehicle after being put in motion. We have 4 kids per group. All of them have their own controlled car. One student is going to have no weight added to their car. Another is going to have what we call lightweight, midweight, heavyweight, and we'll get more into that in a second.
We do that with
Yep, with the hex
the
nuts.
hex nuts.
I have a photo of it, I think.
Oh, sorry.
But the 6-day cycle starts with first just learning the concepts that we're teaching. So what is the current Newton law that we're talking about? What is the variables we're measuring? This one is distance and displacement. How are we going to measure it? Day 2, which typically happens during ELA time, is when we start writing our lab reports. The first one is very handheld walked through. But as we move through each level and each of the different investigations, we pull back a little bit more and more until finally they're writing them fully on their own by the time we get to science fair, which after Egg Dash is when we get to science fair, so everything is completely independent by that point. Day 3, finishing up the lab reports. This is the hypothesis and the procedures. The hypothesis is, the main piece of that is that it's not just a guess, it's a guess backed up by the evidence we learned from day 1. So how can we use that content that we learned to then predict what will happen?
Make sense of the energy transfer.
Yeah. So this was the photo. So each student is going to they're going to be put into a group of 4. 4 is a great number because it's what we call the Goldilocks effect. There's always something that's too hot, too cold, and then adjust right. Sometimes the no weight, which they think is going to go the furthest, that's not going to necessarily always work the best, the one you expect, because in our case with these, our tires will spin out on the rear end after you put it in motion.
Right.
So you get to see that really clear Goldilocks. Yeah, you get to see the really clear Goldilocks effect after we do it. So 4 is the ideal amount in a group, but not all of our investigations we have the ability to have 4 changes. So the students are put into the group of 4. Each one of them are working on their own variable, but helping measure and record the data after each of the trials. So this is just a video of how to line them. The day 4 would be the fun day, the data collection day, where they get to have their races, their drag races, and measure distances and do all the fun stuff. Days 5 and 6 is where we're finishing up the rotation of the one investigation. So we see on this one the Goldilocks effect. The lightweight is much higher than the no weight. They went much further because ultimately the no weight tends to spin out. And then again, the conclusion is mainly done during ELA time for our informational and expository
They
writing.
find out which weight is more efficient than the others. So
Efficient.
we try to have a little fun with that. So
Greg tries to have fun with that.
So these are all hands-on labs that we do,
Yep.
where we investigate whatever we can with the materials that we have.
Yeah.
And so we have the kids go do all the dashes, if you will, and the kids will participate after we go through
Yeah.
all
All the different investigations we can do.
We'll have them participate in the dashes where we want to see which one is the fastest, which one can travel the furthest, which one can, CSDA has that ramp, well, not the ramp, but the hallway up is like a
Yeah.
ramp, which one can travel up the farthest, et cetera, et cetera. So we have the kids mock up take their race car that they have in front of them, and then they get to start mocking it up to use the data that they found in our lab reports to start to create the fast car. And then after that, we want to honor those traditions that our former colleagues put in, right? An egg drop. And you can see my car here. So they get to then mock up their car after they've got it to their speed so it can hold an egg. If you can see that, I like to put my golden egg. This is my bad boy car. This is like the Snowcanator 4.0.
And I have to say, he's been doing this for how many years?
A few.
How many times have you won?
Never.
So he likes to talk a lot of, be very competitive with the kids,
Yeah, but that's okay. That's okay. It gets them all fired up. But so we're always trying to get better. And I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to go to New Orleans, because not only were we able to showcase what we do, but we were also able to learn some new things. And do you mind showing that one thing? So
the other
in
website.
New Orleans, at their massive convention center, they have an expo center. So you can take sessions. And Sam and I's actually, our session was pretty, we were pretty well attended. We had 39 people come, which was by far more than any other session that I attended outside of Lego. But Lego's Lego.
Yeah,
right?
Lego's Lego, so we can't really beat them.
So I was at the expo center, and I was probably creepy because I just kept hanging around this veneer, this booth they had, because they had this like eye candy to me. Like I wanted it, and I knew we don't have a lab that helps the kids to investigate Newton's third law, the action-reaction piece that is essentially the egg drop. And I just kept looking at it, and then we came back last week, and I took that $728 wish, right? And the whole idea is, and I built this whole thing, right? Where, and I don't know if you guys saw, if you noticed, but where the car, how it bounces back, we're gonna actually add a lab to our we're gonna tweak our lab. So we're gonna take that lab where the kids took weight and measured distance, and we're gonna actually apply it to the kids, changing the weight and measuring the bounce back, with the idea that the further the car bounces back, the less energy that is being absorbed, and you don't want the car to bounce back because you want the car to absorb the energy and not have the egg absorb the energy. And I feel like that is going to make our current unit better, and that was because of the opportunity down in New Orleans. When you're there and you're attending these sessions, and then you're done. And it was really Sam and I. We were just walking along the Mississippi River one night, and a wonderful young, super talented young lady here. It's so odd. I was like, I just can't find a change with my toys here that will work. And she's like, why don't you just change the weight? Are you kidding me?
The elastics. Yeah, the elastics.
Well, it was the weight. Why don't we just change the weight for the bounce back?
Yeah,
But we can measure the elastics. We can change the
Yes, that's
potential
true.
energy for the displacement of the car. And so it was a wonderful opportunity that we had to attend sessions to and to measure your own self and what you're putting forth to your students against other schools and whatnot, other people that were presenting. I think we held up pretty well. We were able to network. We met some wonderful people from Michigan. We met people from Maryland, et cetera, et cetera. Idaho, yep. And it was, then being able to attend the expo center and bring that back. It was an awesome opportunity for the two of us just to, you build collegial relationships with one another. And I think it just, all of it, to me, permeates down to the benefit of the kids. And I know it was, I'm sure, it was probably a pricey trip to send two people to, but I can say steadfastly that I tried to get the most of it, and I think we're already going to see an immediate turnaround in something better. This community has always been very supportive of everything we've done. I thank them for that, and I give a little plug to Mrs. Asenson, one of my current parents. One of the things that we changed, we like to make 4 changes, and one of the things we struggle with is the Connects only has 3 really wheels, and we always want to look at the rear wheel of a drag racer. And Mrs. Asenson printed gears. These are Connects gears. If you wrap a rubber band around them, she's working on a 4th one for us. But one of the things we change is the rear wheel, and we measure speed. If you can picture a drag racer, they always have those big wheels. And we have big wheels, as you can see on some of those cars, but you're also not changing just the circumference of the wheel, you're changing the weight of it, which is a problem, whereas these guys are pretty lightweight, and so she...
And the 3D printer, you can, I guess, control the weight of them as well.
So she just took a model, this is a Connects gear, and she just kind of ran it through and was like, oh, look at this. So it's a work in progress, and it's just people like that in this community, both as staff and as parents, who have just made this such a wonderful journey, from when I got here in 2002. I feel like we have our Egg Dash really connects well with our science fair. We're honoring those traditions that were in place when we came, a science fair, preceded by an egg drop. Actually, we have a photo we can just show real quick if you don't mind. I know we're probably up against it on time, but an egg drop, if you can picture myself or whomever dropping egg capsules off of the roof. I don't know if you can this is what they do now, so that the kids actually have to build a car that can compete in a big old tournament. We do this in March, so it works out with with March Madness. Not only do they have to, be efficient in how far they can travel and whatnot, and I don't have a great egg word for speed, but anyways, they have to be safe, and so we ramp them off the, we have 2 eggs we give each kid, and we ramp them off the, for the crash, we ramp them off the stage, and then that smash, we take that ladder that's on the CSTA stage, and
There's a 2x4 at the bottom of this that you can't
You
see,
can't
but
see.
it goes straight down into a piece of, like a
Yeah.
2x4 block.
And so that, I would argue that thing on the right is an egg drop, and but it's
Cooler.
there's nobody that's going to show up with a coffee cup and we're going to put it through a pretty robust thing.
Yeah.
I thank everyone for that opportunity that Sam and I had. We presented our science fair, we presented the egg smash. I think we have a really good meteorology program as well. I think we're doing some good stuff, and I hope the community appreciates it. I certainly appreciate all of you and all of them, and the support that they've given me, and now Sam. Again, a super talented young lady here that really, just walking down the river, like, why don't you just change the weight? I don't know. I just never thought of it. I'm sorry.
Things like this is great because more so Greg. I have only been doing this in 6th grade. This is my 3rd year in 6th grade, but you kind of get stuck in the routines of this is what we do, so this is how we do it. So it's cool to go and meet new people, to be like, and just that case with us, but talking to these people from Michigan, it's like, oh, well, why don't you just do it this way? It's like, oh, that's how you do it? So it's really cool just to hear the differences. We're from such a small building that we're the only science teachers that do this. So we don't really have counterparts to network with and to chat about that kind of stuff. So it's really cool to have these opportunities. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
so
you
many
for
questions.
presenting.
Absolutely.
And I know it's-
so many questions.
I know, we could have done a whole nother hour presentation on this easily, but
And thank you for your
Now is not
passion
the
for it.
time.
The students love it and look forward to it. I know having one who went through it is a big part of his year, so thank
But
you.
you guys would laugh. At our presentation, I figure we're in Louisiana, so being from Ohio, Joe Burrow, the quarterback for the Bengals, was the quarterback for Louisiana State, LSU. I was like, watch this, Sam, I'm going to win the crowd. How many of you are from LSU? And thinking I'm going to, connect. There was like 2 hands up raised. Because I'm like, oh, Joe Burrow, Ohio. They're like, boy, we're from Alabama. I'm looking at Sam. I think she must have felt for me, like, oh.
he tries. He really tries so hard.
And I thought it was kind of humorous, but boy, we're from Alabama. So in the end, we have enough pieces that we had participants do a tournament race, and the winner won a car, and so. If I couldn't win them with being from Joe Burrow's background, I could win everything. Yeah, so, but thank you.
I know.
So
Please
cool.
be careful.
Thank you.
Share.
Yeah, no,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nice job.
I don't need too many 50-year-old men that can play with toys.
Are other schools doing egg
You're
races
welcome.
like this?
I'm glad you
Are
could
guys
make
the
it.
only ones?
No. The people were very interested in our lab reports. They wanted our lab reports as much as anything.
Fascinating.
The lab reports, and then we had people ask us, well, how do you get into, how can I crunch this down into 2 weeks? And it's like, well, you gotta get rid of the DLA. Not get rid of.
Cut back on.
But pawn it off on your colleagues.
Yeah.
So we
A
just-
lot of the people we were meeting were solely science teachers, because it was middle school typically. So they didn't have as much time as we do with our groups.
Yeah.
We are lucky in the fact that we have ELA with them still, but a lot of people are just seeing their kids for 45 minutes. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, thank you.
Great.
Thank you so
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you. Really fantastic.
We didn't take too much time.
No, this is the fun part.
Yeah.
And I have Joe Burrows on my fantasy team, so it's been a good year.
I'm talking about
That's funny.
I thought it would have been the crowd, but. I was like, oh my God, I got 55 more minutes. All right, thank you.
Would they rather
Thank
not?
you. We appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Good luck this year with that. All right, since it is 6:26, I'm going to open the floor for public input and ask if anybody has anything they want to discuss. All right, we'll leave the floor open for a half hour and then move back to approval of minutes.
Yep, that'd be great.
So I'll make a motion. Yeah, okay. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the 10/10/24 meeting as amended. Are there any amendments?
Was it 10:23?
Yeah, 10:20, because
Oh, I
10:10
have
was the
10.
governing board.
Oh, okay. Oh, I have the governing board, sorry. A little bit behind you. Thank you. I think I'm on the wrong one. No, it says no.
Here, you want me
No.
Yeah, because these are the same ones. All right, so I'll go over the amendments. And then, if we want to, well, I can make a motion to accept the amendments and then we go over them.
You could
Kind
just
of
make
go
a
over.
motion to state the amendments,
Okay,
and then somebody can second it.
all right, so I'll make a motion to accept the following amendments. Does anyone want to second it? And we'll talk about it. All right, so page 9, line 1, insert that before if. Page 9, line 20, capitalize there. Page 13, line 37, replace out with our. Page 13, line 44, replace instruction with instructional. And page 15, line 31, replace alters with alerts. Any discussion on that? All in favor of those amendments? Okay. And that's it, I think. for-
Did you have a second?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Okay, and then we can move on to the principal reports.
All right, so our enrollment is staying steady. Total enrollment for Brookline is 559. We've had some highlights for this past month. Big news, of course, continuing is the Student Council has started at CSDA. They've been working on the Brookline Food Pantry collection, as well as preparing for the Turkey Trot. They have also, I have some of the members, they've signed up to help support the PTO. We're trying to do some community outreach activities. So I'll be working with the students on Friday, December 6th, to help the PTO set up for their kids, Brookline Kids Shopping Bazaar, which will take place on Saturday, December 7th. So the students have really been doing a wonderful job and pride in being the voice of their community, their classrooms. And today we had another meeting, and we are putting together some spirit ideas for the week before the holidays. So there's lots of news and activities going on there.
And at RMS, we've had our major topics are community helpers being learned at preschool. A lot of the classes are learning about shapes, place value, distributive property. Third grade is doing some traditional literature units. We've been integrating the B-bots back into our learning commons classrooms. All the classes are learning about gratitude during their morning meeting. And we had a really wonderful turnout at our Halloween parade in October. It was probably the largest showing we've had. So it was nice of all the families to come out and friends, and the students are excited. And the only other update is on our staffing needs. The RMS paraeducators, we are down to 3 instead of the 5.
So we hired.
Yeah, so just wanted to do a shout out to our special ed leadership team for recruiting and trying to help with that need.
I think I saw there's a drama program starting at CSCA, right? Or is that back?
Yes, that's actually through the PTO.
Oh, it is.
And yep, so notifications went out on Monday morning.
That makes sense. But
Yep,
that'll be
so
very
kids
exciting.
are excited about that as well.
Okay, any other questions or thoughts? Thank you. All right, if not, we can move on to budget. Are you okay?
Very good.
All right, I'm gonna need.
Yes, too. Actually, I'll have one too.
In your board packet, you have an Excel spreadsheet,
Kelly, do you want to talk about?
which goes line item by school, that tells you about the planning stages of the FY25 budget. You also have the new items, which we just completed round 3, where I'm going to spend the brunt of my time. And then I handed out a sheet which was titled the Brookline Infrastructure Project, which we'll also go over. First, the budget goes along well. In looking at new items, we've made some adjustments based on pricing to the literacy program and the literacy program from round 2 to round 3. And that was simply because of money that was already allocated in our line items on the Excel spreadsheet, as well as some, we went from estimates to what I'll call accurate costs. Not much has really changed there. I did want to update you, I'm not sure if it's in this section, I don't see it. So I'll wait. If you go down to CSDA, you also see an adjustment in the literacy program there from 15,000 to 10,000. Pretty much everything else has been maintained.
So was that 15,000 to 10,000? You're saying that was an accurate cost adjustment?
Yes, so it was either already in the line item from last year, so the cost is not as much, or it was the estimate became actual at that difference, okay?
I did have a question about
Sure.
this one. So I saw that the horizontal rock wall came out.
Yep.
So with the partial funding from the PTO and the grant, what happens with that since we take in the?
That was actually the item that I was looking for, and I didn't see it, so it's just poor eyes. That is going to be fully funded through private. We found that out from our PE teacher. So that came out of our budget.
Okay, so it's not going away, it's just coming out of our budget.
It's coming out of our budget. We're still investigating what I would call the liability around it, because I'm not sure how our insurance company will feel about that. Right now, we have one rock wall at the middle school, one rock wall at Hughes, and then potentially this one. So I don't know, it may not impact our liability insurance, because we're already covered under the big umbrella for the middle school at Hughes, but I'll know more as we move forward.
Andy, also the Kids Heart Challenge as well, that we get money from that every year, so that's also helping with
I was like sad for you, Dan. I was like, oh no, his rock wall.
It's all actually it's all Steve Martison, one of our floater sub nurses that are working on this project, and they've got great plans for it. And I appreciate the fact that they've looked for other creative ways to fund it. So.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Because I'll be honest, from my vantage point, it probably wouldn't make it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But when Dan told me that, it was exciting news, because it comes out of the budget, yet it's probably still likely to be implemented.
That's wonderful.
Awesome.
Really happy right now where the budget is with regard to personnel, and I'll try to walk you through this. First, we are requesting an environmental science teacher, and this would be at RMMS, and it would become Dan's 5th special, am I correct in that?
Yeah.
Dan's 5th special, which would allow him greater flexibility with the master schedule for the school, and anytime you get greater flexibility, it allows you to do more in terms of providing services to students. We anticipate this being well received, and I wouldn't be surprised in a couple of years if you didn't see a similar request for it to continue at CSDA. The mentor program addition is just under Gina's leadership. We have developed an internal mentor program, because as you know, we have so many new teachers. This is going very well. Last month, we touched upon the chemical hygiene safety stipend. That is now required by law, so we have an individual who's going to do it for the SAU, and that is the portion allocated to the elementary schools. If you were to look in the co-op budget, you'd see a much more significant portion because of all the chemicals at the high school and middle school. The MTSS facilitators, these are 2 individuals that would be gathering data regarding student performance, which would help us with our SIT teams, which is student and teachers looking at improvement. The next two positions, we kind of just have kept them identical, but just split them up to allocate cost. One is school psychologist. We have one currently. We're looking to add a second, so each building would have their own. So you see the cost just allocated half at RMS and half at CSDA, but it's a full-time position. That way, each building would have their own. This will also allow more flexibility for our guidance counselors to do different roles. So it really, again, when you talk about building bandwidth and able to service kids, this will be a huge help. The next one is, in the last iteration of the budget, we had MTSS para interventionists. In discussions with Gina, she made a great point that we're not likely to get those paras. We're struggling to get paras now.
Right.
So putting more paras into the budget probably wouldn't enhance it. And she brought up, and I fully support, moving to an interventionist, which will be a teacher. That teacher will work in both buildings, but by having a certified teacher, they can do the interventions themselves in math, science, wherever the need may be. And it will probably allow us, we're still working through the finished product of it, to offer more interventions for both students who struggle as well as students who are very successful. You know, those extensions. So you see that split between the two buildings, and Dan and Tricia would work on that assignment of hours in each building. At the CSDA, we are looking for a lunch recess monitor. We have the chemical hygiene safety stipend there. We have the facilitator of the gathering of the data of all the different things, and then their half of the interventionist. Okay. As we discussed last month, this budget has the PK coordinator. That person would be able to, our intent is to combine it with an existing half-time position. So that is the salary component, because that person's pretty much benefits eligible now. And then you see we have a new para coming in for 26 based on what will be coming into the building. And then you see two positions for FY25 that we needed to hire to meet the needs of students that were with us already.
So I just have two questions about this. So first, with the PK coordinator, are you looking at having that be somebody that's already in the building, somebody that's already hired, or is that we're hiring for that?
So we would have to post the position as it's a new position, but the idea would be it would be combined with the half-time preschool teacher, and this so that it's a 1.0 with benefits. Otherwise, we're not really going to find anybody.
Okay, well, because right now I think the half-time preschool teacher is doing another, like they're doing something else during, right? Because they're
Yes.
full-time right now.
Yeah.
Correct.
So we would just move them out of that role and into this,
Well, we'd have to post.
after you post, yes.
Yep.
After you post.
And just to clarify, when we bring in the environmental piece,
Yeah.
that gives Dan the fifth special he needs.
Oh, I see.
So we
Okay.
don't necessarily have to do
Okay.
what that person is doing now.
Okay.
Okay?
The second question I have about this is, I know that did we get guidance from the state about the special education costs? Like, is that gonna impact?
Well,
I know, but it came across my newsfeed, so I just was like, oh, I should ask, like,
No,
in terms of us hiring, like, do we need to calculate that?
the reduction in cost by the state
Yeah,
increases the local tax burden,
yeah,
but the services are guaranteed by law.
okay.
So let me give you an example. Let's just, I'll keep it really simple. Last year, they funded 80%.
Mhm,
Okay, so if we were dealing with $10, they would have given us 8.
mhm.
Next year, they're giving 60% of the 80%.
Great.
Okay?
Okay.
And just to clarify even further, this is for your more intense needs students, and it's really only the portion above a certain dollar amount that's eligible for reimbursement. So it's the 60% of the 80% of the small fraction.
So 25%.
And then we get that, what is it, 2 years after the fact, after we
Right.
submit?
So if we had a student who was costing us $300,000,
Okay.
we would first have to subtract $70,000 because that's 3 times the cost per pupil.
Okay,
So now I'm down to 230.
okay,
Then I would take 80% of 230, and when I get that number, I take 60% of that number, and that's what's actually coming to us.
2 years later.
2 years later.
Okay.
And this is, again, and there's many examples of it. We're actually working on a sheet to bring to all the boards, kind of to show some of the downshifting, because some of the costs that we're picking up, we have no control over,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to special ed.
Okay, so that is gonna impact the budget
Yes.
in terms of down the road? and
Yeah.
how we should-
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm. But at the same time, it further justifies building as many in-house programs as we can.
Yeah.
Because as their reimbursement goes down, like having those, a school psychologist in each building, first of all, we'll get out of consulting fees, which are exorbitant, and we'll get them for the entire day to utilize potentially for students who we have questions about, rather than students who are already identified.
Yeah, I think this is gonna be something that we probably wanna educate around as much as we can
Oh.
prior to the meeting, because I think otherwise people are gonna kind of see like, well, why do you need a school? And it's like, okay, what we're trying to do is actually maintain, so we might wanna think about how we wanna.
Exactly. And I think that
To those.
what we've done is kind of make sure that what we're trying to do is by these positions coming on board, we expand our bandwidth
Yeah.
so that we hopefully limit consulting services.
Right.
So ultimately, we kind of stay budget neutral,
Yeah,
and that's all dependent on what comes in.
okay.
And limit out-of-district placements, which
And
are
then, yes,
outrageously expensive.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
The new computer equipment, we have an access point for pickup patrol at RMS. Everything else was moved to the REAP grant, so that is still being purchased, the items from the beginning, wherever you see that little highlight. So like at RMS, $32,680 of Chromebooks from round one is actually moving to the REAP grant. At CSDA, $13,500 worth of interactive flat panels is being funded through the REAP grant. Okay. You see the rest of what I would call the integration cycle, which is just the system that Carol Tyler has set up from an IT standpoint, so that we don't necessarily get a tax spike. You know, pretty much you're going to see about 65 Chromebooks purchased every year. And as I told the board last month, we expect to start seeing a larger source of revenue from reselling the Chromebooks when we're done with them. We have shared services, Incident IQ and the firewall system are two. One is an asset management system that helps us track our own equipment. The other is continuing to increase security around our firewall. As Gina and I learned at a recent seminar, schools are attacked constantly because the data that they hold is student data, which if you get somebody's data who is not going to probably go into the workforce or be looking for a loan or a car loan for a number of years, it's going to take a long time that they could have access to that number before anybody questions that number. So we learn more every day. Safety and compliance issues, we're purchasing more walkie-talkies that will help us in our various drills and our reunification drills. So we have those listed at both schools. We moved a number of things to the lease or to the infrastructure project that we'll discuss in a couple minutes. We have door frame replacements, which is phase 4 out of 5 at CSDA. At Dan's, we have the chimney and cupola repair. We have classroom flooring, the last phase of his cafeteria tables, some trim replacement, and gutters for certain locations.
When it says to warrant or to account lines, just, I'm not sure what that means.
Okay. To the warrant would mean what we'll discuss next,
That's what it
okay?
is. Okay,
If it says to the trust, that means maintenance trust.
okay.
And if it says REAP, that's our grant.
The grant, okay, and then the
Okay.
account lines, is that this also, the infrastructure project?
The account lines are a part of the project, yeah, so those are just savings and rebates that would come in to offset the cost, but we'll explain that a bit.
Thank you. Moving down to CSDA. CSDA has two, I'd say, rather large projects. The $80,000 life skills renovation and the $104,000 for the STEP program spaces. Now, we continue to tour the facility, working with our facilities manager and some consultants. We do believe these costs might come down slightly as we try to look for efficiencies in where we're doing the spaces and what the needs are. But those two programs are in-house special ed programs, and would be a significant savings by keeping our children in district. The $20,000 there would be the money to make the soccer field handicapped accessible.
Is that required by law?
If we would like to use it during the school day, yes.
Okay.
If we chose not to use it, we can go for a period of time. At some point, it needs to be done. We were just made aware of this about,
Couple years ago.
yeah. So we're finally coming up with what I'll call a cost-effective solution by going through a series of vendor. And then the kind of ongoing classroom countertop repairs, generated service contract, replacing the skirting around the portables, and that takes us to, right now, a grand total of $796,038. So, from an operating point of view, right now, we are increasing from last year's operating budget by $803,832, which about 3.5% of that is personnel. The school psych, the interventionist, the PK person, the paras that were outlined. The SAU assessment, the dollar amount is only increasing about $12,000, but we're losing revenue. Because last year, if you were on the SAU board, you may realize that we allocated revenue to that. So that's why it's going to be overall about a 2.5% increase to the SAU budget, and that's why you see the $20,000 there, but we only increased 12 in the total budget that was constructed. The infrastructure lease I'll go over momentarily, and the maintenance trust fund is the items that we're looking at are the intercom bell system at RMS. We did half of that cost last year, so this would be the second half of that. The STEP program space that I just talked about. This would be phase one of doing the bathrooms. RMS's bathrooms are, I would say, original, maybe other than a couple paint jobs and a couple things like that. And then the
1961.
Yep. The number one priority is the end of life on the Milford Street roofs replacement. So if we had to change things around, and you said to me, we can't do all those things, the one I would have to prioritize first is Milford Street roof. Okay.
Are we gonna run into a law issue with the bathrooms being from 1961? Like, are they are they ADA accessible or no? Okay.
They are not accessible.
They are not accessible.
We have an accessible bathroom at RMS, so that gets us through, but it's,
But we are potentially skirting the line here a little bit.
Correct.
On the,
Well, if we do nothing, we're fine,
okay.
because they're grandfathered in. But it's time to do the bathrooms. So this would
Oh,
be,
no, yeah, I
no, I know, I know you agree, but I just mean for people at home that are gonna watch the video, you know, and this phases them in, and it'll start the process. Because there's a big difference between Trish's bathrooms that are 2000, and Dan's, which are 1961.
I would rather phase them in over time than all of a sudden have an issue and have to do the entire
Right.
bathroom in one shot,
Right.
because
Yeah.
that would be
Right.
really challenging financially to do.
Yeah, I think I'm also, like, the water, so one time when I was visiting the preschool classroom and the water ran out in the bathroom, is that normal? Does that happen a lot?
In the preschool bathroom? Or the
Well, they don't
preschool
have
room?
bathroom, but like in the bathroom, like, and then the sink in the preschool wasn't
Were you there for
working.
Halloween?
Yes, and the sink stopped working in the preschool room. So like, do we have water issues?
It might have been the day that, was it the day of the parade?
Yeah.
It's because everybody was using the bathroom before the parade.
Okay, so we do
So-
have water issues. Like,
Well,
here,
when,
or we don't?
when you have that many people using the
All
bathroom
the
at that
kids,
point.
I mean, you're
Yeah, when
you're
they're
well.
Everybody-
past that
Everybody's
so
saying,
fast.
take your bathroom break so we can go.
But I've heard of other times when the water
Yeah, but
line
we've,
goes a little bit.
that was a lot of,
It's a
that was when we
challenge.
had the sprinkler system going, but since
Oh.
then, it's been better.
Okay.
But we've
Okay.
noticed that whenever we do like our offsite evacuation or a big school-wide event.
So basically, when everyone makes a mad rush on the bathroom.
Yes, that's when, that's what happens.
Yeah.
It's like
Or if there's a leak.
switch.
but we know where it is, we figure.
Is that taxing on the well? Is that what it?
Yeah,
it
that's
is?
basically what it is.
Mhm.
I just have one question on
Sure.
personnel, I just want to make sure
Yep.
I understand. So I get the MTSS, the interventionists out completely because we can't, we're having trouble hiring in general
Yep.
for paras. But the school counselor is also taken out, and it says it was to support interventions, so did we decide to go with the school psychologist instead of a school counselor? And
Yeah.
what would the school psychologist, would their main role though be testing, so we're losing?
So the school psych certainly does all the testing, but in our other schools in our district, the school psych also does some of the regular services that are on the service grid of an IEP. Here in Brookline, with one school psych split between both buildings, there's not enough time to even do the testing, so we're contracting for testing. But this would allow the school psych to take on some of those required pieces so that our school counselor is more readily available.
So you're talking about easing the, interventions the school counselor has to provide that the school.
Correct.
psych will provide those. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so in each building, just give me a description, so we would have, now, if this went through, we would have a school psychologist in
Correct.
each building?
Yep.
And
And
a
a school
counselor
counselor.
in each,
Yeah.
okay.
Right. So it should actually increase our bandwidth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
In
that makes
terms of
sense.
hiring though, how are you, how confident are we feeling on hiring a school psych?
They're pretty.
It's not easy to hire school psych, but it's certainly, our goal to hire rather than to contract for overages.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, I'm for it going through, but I'm wondering, are we gonna be on the hook again for more, having to contract more if we don't feel that there's a pool for hiring?
No, so, at the end of the day, we are required to pay for what we have to pay for, right? So, right now, we are contracting for some of those testing services because the one person cannot meet the needs of both buildings. So we're already paying for what's not budgeted. This allows us to have a budgeted line item that we want to hire, and we will look and recruit and do all of that. And then if we can't, at least we have the funding mechanism to fund what we're paying for anyway.
Okay, that makes that makes sense.
So,
Sorry, Amy, I just have one question.
Oh, yeah.
About the 8.9%, do we have to bring that down? Is that what has to be under the 8? I'm still trying to figure out the budget cap.
well, the tax cap, I'm gonna come in December, because it'll be a joint meeting with the with the Brookline Finance Committee.
Okay.
We invite them.
Okay.
Because the tax calculation is different than these percentages. And let me try to give you a quick example. The maintenance trust,
Yeah.
as Jim told us, because it's funded from fund balance, surplus from this year, it's not a part of the tax cap calculation,
Okay.
okay? So right now, that is included between the 13.8, because again, we're not doing tax cap yet, we're just doing budget, okay? The other piece is we returned $338,000 from last year's budget, which offsets the tax rate.
Okay.
So that also needs to be subtracted out. So there'll be a separate sheet provided to you in the Finance Committee that'll show the tax cap. And I think right now, from our projections, we feel comfortable that we're going to be in line with the tax cap.
Okay.
And again, that also, in December, the board should decide if they want to do anything with the tax cap, or put a warrant on regarding the tax cap, because we would need some guidance to get that posted as part of the warrant.
Okay.
Just a curiosity, when you say we're in line with the tax cap, your projections in line as in our max, or we're falling under?
Right now, if I had to guess, I'd put us between 6 and 7,
Okay.
okay? But I think, I was never opposed, when the tax cap was put in, I didn't want a tax cap, but at the same time, if we were going to have one, I always felt the 8% we could do. The difference is now with all the warrant articles, my worry isn't this year. My worry is next year, when you have the teacher's contract, and then you have the para contract, because those numbers typically are gonna be, probably a few $100,000 for the teachers, and then probably another $100,000 for the paras. So now, I've already gone through almost 50%, if not more, of the tax cap, and I haven't done anything with the schools.
Yep.
plus if the special education costs are continuing to be increasing, like we're having to pick up more of that burden, I think that's something we have to consider also, because again, those are
Right.
federally mandated services, so they have to come from somewhere, so either we have to then buck the tax cap again, you know,
That might change too.
that, yeah.
I
We're
mean,
not- yes.
I
that might
mean, you have to
change.
watch what's happening at the federal level too, because a lot of that may also change too. so.
Right, and that's the other piece of not knowing what's coming down, like,
Right.
right now, Governor Sununu has told all departments in the state to cut by 4%. Now, at least on the education side, the funding that comes to us is mandated. So there'll be some difference because of enrollment in that. So the brunt of the education cuts will be the 4% will have to be personnel. They don't have anywhere else to go. But that'll mean, when we're trying to get a question answered, there may be a longer delay, there may be longer time to go through a due process piece. And all of that is, time is money. So the number of times Lauren has to make the trip up to Concord are days that she's not in district servicing kids.
Yep.
Yep. So those, go ahead.
I said understood.
Okay, so those percentages are, probably still gonna have some adjustments. I think where you may see them is the life skills renovation and the STEP program, because if I take money out of the STEP program, I may decide to move something else into the maintenance trust. Because I do like that vehicle for maintenance, because over the years, the voters have been very accustomed that if we said we were gonna do X, Y, Z out of maintenance, X, Y, and Z gets done. Switching over, if there's no other questions, I'd like to go over to the Brookline Infrastructure Project. These projects are basically items that were requested when we did the last lease. If you recall, we had two proposals. One was for $2.5 million approximately, the other was for $1.5. So these are the proposals that didn't, or items that didn't get done when the voters approved the $1.5 million versus the $2.5.
So I may be behind, can you explain just a little bit about the lease, because I don't actually know
Okay,
what you're talking about.
okay. The lease is just a funding mechanism.
Okay,
If we were going to do what I would call construction, like this library was construction, if the majority of the project is construction, then we utilize a bond.
okay.
The lease purchase option, we typically do for equipment. The equipment is pretty much required to be something that's going to last longer than the lease. So when you look at it, this is lights and boilers and things like that. And the nice part of the lease is it allows you to spend the money as you go. So the minute I take the bond, I start paying interest.
Okay,
When I get the lease, yes, I'm paying interest, but when it sits in my account, I'm earning interest.
okay,
So it can almost offset each other, especially right now where interest rates are to the school district's benefits. They're better than they were a few years ago. So the projects at RMS is to do the rest of the building with the LED lighting, which would be a cost of $255,000, with an energy savings of $16,000 and potential rebates of $35,000. Please understand that we believe in the state of New Hampshire that rebates for lights will be going away in 2 years. It's kind of at the point now they're saying basically if you haven't done it by now, you missed the boat. Then we have the DDDC controls. Those are for our heating units and will allow us much more efficiency than our present system that we have now. Cost of that is $45,500 for RMS, an energy savings of $2,500, and a potential rebate of $5,000. So phase one at RMS is $300,500 for the two pieces, with $18,500 in energy savings and rebates of approximately $40,000. Moving over to CSDA, again, we have the lights, $215,000, with energy savings of $15 and potential rebates of $35. The controls for the boiler are $43,000, energy savings of $2,500, and rebates of $2,500. The central boiler tank, and this is the, really the big item that we strongly recommend be addressed is $572,750. You would get a $12,000 energy savings and a potential rebate of $8,000. So if you do the cost at CSDA, it's $831,250, energy savings of $29,500, and rebates of $45,005. So that gives us a grand total of $1,131,750, with savings of $48,000 and rebates of $85,000.
And I just want to add in that those savings are annual, so we would see that 48,000 annually.
Right. So a 20-year lease, the current rate is 4.97, and they appear to be trending downward. They're kind of similar if you follow mortgage rates or any type of long-term funding. They do seem to be trending downward, but who knows? It's very volatile out there, as we all know. So the payment on that lease would be $90,565.35. In between our energy savings and the rebates, that would be cost neutral in year one. In subsequent years, the energy savings would continue, so it would offset some of the cost of the lease, but not the potential total cost. We tried to make it as cost neutral as we could, but at the same time, we are concerned about, our heating plants. Again, the boiler at CSDA can continue to be fixed when it goes and has breakdowns, which it does, but they become more and more costly every time. And at some point, we just have to get that taken care of before we end up having to do it because it's an emergency situation.
I got a couple of questions.
Sure.
First is with the interest rate on this, is that fixed or,
Yep.
as we're saying that we know that potentially they're trending down, it wouldn't ever be, like,
Correct.
once we take it,
Yep.
we're locked into that.
Correct.
Okay, when we get the rebates, that will go back against the lease, that's not gonna go anywhere else, budget-wise, right?
That's what we
We're
have
gonna-
done, and that would be something that I would have the board, I'll say, take formal action, so it's
Okay.
very clear.
So it's clear that
Yep.
that's going back to there.
Yep.
Okay, my last question's about the boiler tank, because this is gonna be a big one, and I understand that. Just so that we have the knowledge and the board is aware, can we get the last, 5 years of service breakdown, history, and cost? Just so that we have information and we are knowledgeable about the whys for this, because yes, we can continue to fix it. How much have we already put into it?
Mhm.
When's the end of life at this thing? I am not opposed to fixing this. I just want to make sure that when we go to our community, we're able to clearly articulate and show the benefits of doing this now versus waiting. I mean, yes, it's obvious. However, this is a big cost, and I know that things are tight for a lot of people, and so I would just like to be able to clearly articulate for our community what we've already pumped into this thing, what the end of life looks like,
Yep.
potential failures in the future versus replacing, not having school disruptions because we don't have heat, etc. So if we can do a little homework, if we get a little homework, I would like to see that. Again, just so that when we do sit down and talk with the public, we have that.
Yeah, well, because I
History.
think otherwise we're going to find ourselves in a similar situation to the firewalls, right? Where the firewalls, we push that down a little bit and then they fail, right? We have to replace them. And so I agree with you. I think it would be good for us to see, because again, it's all about one of the biggest things people have been asking for is we want to see, right, where things are going. And at the same time, we don't want to find ourselves in that situation where we're having a, Mythbusters episode in the basement because the boiler blew up and now we need to replace it.
Right.
Catastrophically because things aren't working.
Right.
So I do think that's.
Well, and the fire panels are a great example because we had one public hearing, then the cost went up again. When they actually got inside the walls, the costs were larger, but it was in the maintenance trust. And it was a local vendor that we used, and they donated what I'll call a significant amount back towards that overrun. So we live in a great community where people are willing to help, but I don't disagree, they crave information.
Yes, and I think, just given the big picture of everything, I think it's really important that we are able to be clear about what we've pumped into. And I don't know what a good time, I don't know if it's the past 5 years or what it is, but if we can get some history on this, boiler, that would be great.
Do we have an idea about when the end of life is for this boiler?
We're approaching end of life.
Yeah.
And I recall that conversation, which is kind of why I'm saying this. Like, I think I would like to have this spelled out on paper.
Yep, and if you recall what Andy said earlier, this was presented a couple years ago as option 1, and then we went with option 2, which was to not include it. So it's been a need, it's been on our radar. Looking at it, it's quite obvious that it's at end of life, but then functioning as well. So there's certainly evidence to support that.
So maybe some visuals this year would be great.
Okay.
I haven't seen it.
We'll take a field trip. We can take a video.
Or a video of it, or something, or just something. Because I think there is an appropriate case to be made here, but I also understand, I also understand the community's perspective of we spend, and I understand that. There's a need though, and so let's just make sure that we're clear about articulating that need, and if we have to have visuals, I think so. I think it's important, right?
Yeah, I think that's important for us just in general with the budget, because I think there is this perception that the school board just like rubber stamps everything, which I don't think is true. Clearly, like, we're very thoughtful about this. I mean, this is my first budget, and like we're being very thoughtful about this, right? I can see that. And I just think at the same time, for whatever reason, even though we're trying, we're just maybe not getting that information out there. So it's like, certainly just, like getting it in front of the eyes would be helpful, I think, because hopefully they would be able to see that, like, a couple of people watched that presentation, the tax cap presentation, and already have made comments about things like, we run a really tight budget, and people are like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, it's, so I think the more that we can get, just numbers and knowledge in front of people, it's healthy.
And I'm thinking about the type of things people ask, right?
Yeah.
Wanting to know before they say, oh yeah, well, we support this, let's spend this extra money. I'm just thinking about the things that people ask, and I think that's one of them. I think it's fair to say, it's this old, we've spent this amount of money into it so far, we can keep putting Band-Aids on it, or we could save ourselves money in the long run. So I think just getting our ducks in a row for that, so that we can support this.
Right, because I think, Annie, you make a good point also that, yes, we did that with the fire panels, and then it ended up costing us more money than we would have originally had these. So I understand that not everything can be like signed off on right away, but I do think it's at the point where maybe we do need to also just say, look, boilers can go really quickly, and we need to make sure that we're meeting inspections and getting like signed off, like on like just being able to have people in the building, but also we're trying to balance out the tab. We know that there are things coming down the line, so let's maybe tackle this now while we do, rather than have it build up and have to go like more.
Sure, and then another aspect to look at, and I'm not sure about the CSDA boiler, but we've seen that in some of our others, you can't purchase the parts anymore. So even if we want to repair, it's just not a feasible solution.
So I think to Allison's point, we'll bring back the proposal, we'll gather that information. We will definitely put some pictures on it, because I know the pictures, we're looking at the same issue at the middle school boiler, and the pictures were like, opened a lot of people's eyes, because it's this big monstrosity, it's not a modern day boiler.
Right.
And the middle school's probably about 40 years old, to give you an idea.
I would also say, as you're putting some of that together, whomever it is that services our boiler, maybe reach out to them and find out what parts are no longer even available. And I think, again, like we have a lot of very knowledgeable people in our town, and I think when they see the monstrosity, right, and when they start hearing, and that kind of information I think is very useful. So I think if we can add that to the list too, that would be great. Appreciate you. I know I'm giving you homework, but thank you.
I don't mind that.
That'll be helpful for March.
I think so, but I think
Well, that's where I'm thinking. That's where my head is.
I
Is for
think
March.
The art parts available is actually, because like my husband works for the FAA, and they have the same issue where they can't actually get parts. and like, could you imagine if the national air system shuts down because you can't get parts to replace a computer? So I mean, obviously that's not gonna happen here, but yeah, kids not being in school, like, you have to have heat, you can't, like, possibly even more damage to the building if something catastrophic happens, like, these are all really valid points that need to be.
Oh, yeah, because if our boiler goes, we don't have heat, our pipes can freeze and.
Yep.
I mean, it's a
It also,
domino.
it can blow up the building, like, let's just be, listen, I watched Mythbusters, I saw them blow up.
Domino effect of it, but no, appreciate the due diligence on putting those things together for us.
Thank you for those good questions. That information will be helpful too. I do want to close public input very late at 7:12. Unless there is, I'll ask before I close. Is there any public input? Still good? Okay. All right. So at 7:12, we'll close public input.
Is there anything regarding the new items list from the board and Word? That number is accurate, 6.7% operating budget to operating budget. I do think it's going to come down slightly.
That's actually my question. I was just like, do you foresee anything else coming out? You've gone through 3 rounds. Is there anything else that you see? I mean, you've been very good and open about like what you're prioritizing, which is helpful for me at least, and I'm sure for everyone else. What is it that is still questionable, or there's a question mark?
It really is the two pieces, like I told you, the life skills renovation
Okay.
and the STEP program. I want to get a more concrete number on that.
Okay.
And then if the STEP program went down, then I may shift some items that are more what I would call maintenance from the budget into the maintenance trust.
So we're not looking at taking out the life skills and that we were just looking at getting a more accurate cost that could possibly reduce and therefore shift.
Right, and let me give you an example of what we're looking at. Presently at CSDA, we're looking for rooms that would have a sink, okay, for some of the components that we're looking at, and we would be potentially just adding a fridge for the life skills program. We're trying to balance what I'll call instructional time with life skills time, and our art room or our music room doesn't start its day until 1:15. So can we use like the art room for direct instructions with the population, and which may allow us not to have to do as much renovation?
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's what we're looking at, and, you know, we were taking down a wall in one section of the building, but yet we were talking about putting a wall in a different section. So we're just like saying, well, can we not just flip-flop, do different things? So we have a small group that's working on it, and obviously Lauren's involved because she knows the kids best, and if Lauren's involved, that means we have John's input because John physically sits in one of these spaces. So the other day when we were touring, we were discussing with John. So it's really kind of what are the needs of the students coming up to CSDA, and how do we best service them with the components they need? Okay. So what would happen is if something moved, it's going to take that operating budget down because you're going to now have room in the maintenance trust to shift something over, but we're not going to go over the requested amount in maintenance trust.
Okay.
I don't feel comfortable cutting the personnel. I think those are all needed, and I think in some regards, school psychologists, interventionists, and that allow us to give enhanced services, which may be the difference between a child staying in district and a child being placed out of district. And again, the out-of-district costs are just, they're very difficult to control.
So I'm going to mirror Allison a little bit and maybe say, is it possible to get an idea of the difference between supporting a student cost-wise? Like, is it possible for us to get an example of that?
Sure, we'll do a general example, so we're not
absolutely,
but just, I think, what, you know, between, whether it's, we'll try to do a residential placement, or a day placement, because it's, in some instances, it's getting cheaper to be residentially placed because the transportation costs are so exorbitant. So we'll put that together and try to bring that in with the budget.
Yeah, whatever you can do while protecting student
Right.
confidentiality obviously is primary. I'm wondering again if that would kind of help put it in perspective that, like, a day tuition at X school is X amount versus if we were able to renovate, yes, that seems like a big cost, but really we're saving, in the long run, we're saving X amount. I know that would help me.
One student out of
Exactly,
district. for
yes,
the entire
and whereas we
program.
could maybe take that same cost and support 3 students in district, like that's, I'm just wondering if like more of that information, I know budget time's a super busy time for everyone, so I don't wanna overload you with homework, but I just know I mirror Allison, like with what questions they ask at deliberative session and what they're asking us outside of that is people just need that perspective. They're trying to place it in their head and they're just not able to do that, so I think that would help.
Right, and I think it's very difficult for people to grasp the cost of a student
Yeah.
when it is a placement,
Yeah.
you know? And, you know, there are people that ask me just recently, and don't understand that that's required of us by law. You know, it's not that we're making this option.
Right.
We have to provide it in educational setting that is the least restrictive for the student. You know, and that's why those in-house programs are so tremendous. Plus, I think, personally, I think we do a better job. And I think a child not being on a bus for an hour each way every day is a huge benefit for the child.
I did have one question too about the para for the FY26. Is that a full-time position or are we looking, is that a part-time position for the para?
That's full-time with no benefits.
Okay,
When the contract comes up next year, I'm sure that's something that will,
okay, but that would be a
discussing.
full-day position, that wouldn't be happening.
right. And if the child's needs again went beyond what I'll call our normal school day, they could qualify for benefits.
Okay.
Yep.
Andy, I'm sorry to like belabor this again, but can you just explain the maintenance trust, how that, because that's a warrant article.
Right.
But can you just explain to me again how that figures in with the tax cap?
Sure. The maintenance trust is only funded if we have a surplus from what would be the FY25 budget that we're in. So if, let's say we ended the year and there was only $200,000, that $200,000 would go first and foremost to the maintenance trust. And we would have to only buy items up to that.
Okay.
Because it's funded from surplus, it doesn't impact your tax rate. It does negate a potential return of that money, so you'll see, like in previous years, the article would have said, you're not gonna get back 3 cents per thousand or something like that, okay? But the way the new tax law looks at it is because it's not asking us to raise any more taxes. It's not counted in the tax cap. But when we do that, just so you're clear, we'll compare it to, like last year, we had 156,000 in maintenance trust. So we'll do the calculation from last year to this year, so everybody can see how the numbers work out and why we get to the percent we get to for our tax cap.
So, sorry, Mike, I don't know why this microphone's all the way over here. So, my understanding was like, for the tax cap, it was anything that had an impact on the tax rate and not necessarily like raised taxes. So, I don't know. I like trying to wrap my head around this.
Okay. So the warrant article for the operating budget,
Yep,
we're asking the voters to raise and appropriate.
Yep.
So anytime we say raise and appropriate, that's going to be part of the tax cap. We do the same thing with the SAU budget. We would do the same thing with the lease infrastructure energy. The maintenance trust would not be. And then the other piece would be the dollar amount that we return to offset the taxes gets deducted off of that as well. And we've sent it off to legal just to make sure we're not interpreting something different than Jim's presentation.
okay.
And so that would include the special education trust as well, is not a raise, or are we asking to raise and appropriate? No.
The warrant would have to say raise and appropriate. Now, we've always funded that through, I think except for the first year, every other year is funded through surplus.
Okay. And that would be the approach this year as well?
Well, we're not
We're
gonna
not
have,
gonna ask, because we believe we had told people we'd be in the 250, 275 range, and when we reached there, we wouldn't ask
Okay.
until we use some.
Until we use it,
Right.
okay.
So the only trust fund that would be on the warrant would be the maintenance trust.
That's correct.
So it's not like, because I know in the past there was a question of like how the trust
the
funds
order.
are listed on the warrant, which ones got funded first, or,
That's absolutely correct. So whichever one was listed first would be funded first, and when you ran out of funds, you stopped.
okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, I did want to point out, I think I skipped over the nominations, resignations at the beginning of the meeting, so maybe if we could, I don't know if we need a motion to adjust the agenda. Do we have
We
any
have,
nominations and
thank you for,
resignations?
we don't have, no retirement yet. Deadline's December 1st, so
Okay.
next meeting would kind of be the cutoff.
And we'll go back to the regular agenda.
We have a nomination. We're excited about this because this will be, we will be losing a contracted service.
Great.
So we are nominating Charlotte Kubry for case manager / reading teacher. She'll be at CSDA. She has her bachelor's in psychology and elementary ed from Simmons University, and her master's in elementary ed and special ed from Simmons University. She is coming to us with a master's, step 5. Her salary would be prorated, obviously, because she'll start on 12/2. And her salary would be $37,331. And she's coming to us from the Nashua School District.
Wonderful.
Did anybody get that all down, or I'll try to go through it?
Nope, that's
Okay.
all you.
So I'll make a motion to accept the superintendent's nomination of Charlotte
Charlotte.
Charlotte
Charlotte
McCubry.
McCubry, well, I just told him, Charlotte McCubry, for the, she's of Nashua, for the position of reading
Case manager reading,
case manager reading at CSDA at a step 5
master step 5,
and a salary of, and you're gonna have to,
$37,331. And for Dawn, for the minutes, I'll spell the last name. It's MC, capital C, UBREY.
I'll write down the rest so we get that a little bit easier.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Excellent, thank you very much, and thank you for catching that, Connie. I really missed that one.
And then her salary will change next year, is what you're saying, because that's
Yeah, she-
prorated for this year, or is that 37,000 her total salary, like for?
That's prorated for this year, so next year she'd be on master's step 6,
Okay.
per the CBA.
And we don't have any resignations? you said?
Nope.
Okay,
Nope.
great. All right, so now we can go back to the agenda deliberation to see what action the board will take regarding proposed policy memo. So I'll make a initial motion. In a second, I'm going to go over it. One second. Okay, I'm going to make a hold on 1 second. Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve the recommendations of the Brookline School Board Policy Committee as per the memorandum provided as part of the agenda packet. In a second, and then we can discuss.
I will second that.
Okay. Did you want me to talk or are you going to talk?
I'll talk, I guess. So we have a policy memo. We met on November 4th and reviewed the following policies. EBCH, which we are proposing as a second reading and adopt. This is the new hazard chemical safety provisions and hygiene plan, which we have reviewed, is now required by law. And you see that stipend on the operating budget to accompany that. We did not make any changes from the first reading on October 23rd, and it is pretty straightforward, so we're hoping to that the board will adopt that tonight. The other two that we're going to be proposing for first reading are EBCB, which is updating the fire drills to include some language from the federal safety plan, the state safety plan. And there's a lot of just all the underline is changed. So this has not been updated since 2005. And so it really specifies, how many drills, of what type, and this is already what our schools are doing, right? So Dan and Trish are following these guidelines and that are in the RSA, but we just need to update our policy. So this would be a first reading. The next policy that is also a first reading is
Is it the lights one?
No, we're going to talk about that one. The next first reading is policy BEDH, BSB, and this has not been revised since 2022, and just trying to clarify and keep consistent with some of the other boards that we provide 30 minutes. And so it's not a maximum of 30 minutes because that might indicate that we could say, oh, we're just going to provide 5 minutes. So it's just that we're providing 30 minutes to hear public comments. And there is, in that rules of order, the first number point, that we as a board can always include additional public comment for specific agenda items, or we can always decide to extend that if we need to. So, and then the third, I'll introduce that, and then we can have discussion on all of these, is the head lice. And the reason why we're bringing this forward as a second reading for discussion is that there's just, for me, as a board member who serves on the policy committee, I just have a hard time trying to reconcile, like there's a lot of must, shalls, and mays. And so, we have criteria for return to school at the bottom of this policy about when a student can come back. And so we tried to make it may and shall be allowed to return. So like in the beginning, we're saying that you can't, in the law says you can't exclude a student based on head lice. But we're sort of saying, okay, well, if you decide to go home because you're uncomfortable, or the parent decides they want to pick their child up, once they've picked them up, we would like them to do treatment. So just thought that might be good for discussion. So really the only change we made was in the management of the day diagnosis. We changed the word that the staff member will report to may report, because again, it's not a reportable illness or condition. Gina, do you want to add anything?
No, I mean, it's something that we move forward with in our other districts, but we can't exclude, but I think there is a desire to have knowledge of. And so if there is a concern, the school nurse may check, and then parents would be notified. And then they can make a decision for what they want to do at that point. If the family decides to pick up the student, they are 100% able to return because we can't exclude them. So it's basically what the policy is saying.
It's a real head scratcher.
Yeah, so I think, for me, like, I'm good with all of it except for that criteria for returning to school, because if you're not required to treat and you're not required to exclude.
Why is there a criteria to return to school then?
Right.
I think it's because I believe it's based on prior practice that you could exclude. And so previously you could exclude and then you'd have to demonstrate something before you could come back. So now we're saying we cannot exclude, we recommend treatment, and then, nurse can talk to the family about that. And then if you choose to go home, you shall be allowed to return. And then, it says after proper treatment as recommended by the school nurse, but at the end of the day, we can't exclude, but we certainly encourage treatment.
I mean, would it make a difference then to maybe just change the wording that like once a student has left, they shall be allowed to return, we recommend treatment? Would that make a difference?
Or it is strongly recommended that they.
Yeah.
I don't like the way the criteria for school reads. If we can't exclude, they're allowed to return. There's no reason that this, I feel like that sentence, that first sentence from the criteria to return to school is misleading. And that doesn't sit well with me.
Okay.
So.
I almost even would just strike
it
that
out.
whole criteria for return to school.
Mhm.
And then I know we're not consistent with the other boards in the district. Or the other.
So tell me, I guess I'm just curious, like what about that feels misleading?
Once a student with live lice has left the school, they shall be allowed to return after proper treatment as recommended by the school nurse has begun. That is a very clear, they shall be allowed to return after they've done treatment. But we can't enforce that. And the way that is written, that sounds like we are saying they have to do the treatment that a school nurse, not even the child's pediatrician, says that they need to do. And I think that there's an issue there with that. I don't like the way that sits.
So maybe instead of criteria, because I mean, I do think that we should have something in the policy that says we recommend treatment. Like I do feel like we need to be clear about that. So like maybe striking the criteria for return to school, but could be add a section that's like our recommendation is treatment is sought, like recommended treatment. We could put it in by the school nurse or a pediatrician. I mean, I know if I got a call that's Ashland had headlines, we'd be like booking it to the pediatrician for sure, right? Like I don't know if all parents would do that, and that's fine, but I do think that we should make our policy known or our preference known that we prefer that you start treatment. We're not going to exclude, but we do recommend treatment. Treatment is, it's an important part of being a community.
Okay, so I can definitely take that back to the committee.
Yep.
And we'll come up with something brilliant.
So I think, my recommendation is to move it forward, and then we'll bring back the next reading, hopefully read the way you'd like.
All right. Any other questions on any of the policy changes?
So I'm not going to talk about criteria during school, but on the licensed policy, is there a policy that like the nurse would say without outing a particular student or a class, but just like license circling the school? Like, is that something? No? Okay.
No, we can't. However, we do share information in the newsletter as, from the nurse's office of helpful tips. Sometimes they're timely.
I think obviously we want to, of course, protect everyone's confidentiality and like not target like this classroom has lice. And at the same time, I can imagine some parents might be like, why was I not told? So just kind of making sure that we have.
Because we're not allowed to, yeah.
Right, so that we're clear on that we're saying, we're not allowed to tell you, but we do recommend you read the bulletin that comes out on Fridays. Okay. I think I have one more question. On the fire safety question, fire safety drills, fire drills. So we're doing 10 total drills, is what I'm reading. I just want to be clear. Okay, so 10 total drills. 6 of them are actually leaving the school, but not necessarily leaving school grounds, like just leaving the building.
Evacuations.
Evacuation. Okay, but that doesn't mean like off the school property. It just means out of the building.
Right. Yeah, fire drills are now called evacuations.
Evacuations.
Yeah.
Okay. And how long have we been following? I know we're updating it because it hasn't been updated in a while, but how long have we been doing the 10 total per year?
We've always done the 10.
Okay.
We used to have, I think it was 8 fire drills.
Okay.
Were the recommended number.
Okay.
But the co-op had a different number. We had a different number in our policy.
Okay.
Hollis. But then the state gave us guidance of how many evacuations we should do and how many, they call it like all hazard drills. And those are your avoid, deny, defend, your reverse evacuations, drop cover holds.
Okay.
So, but we typically do like one a month,
Okay.
and we always try to do a couple of evacuations in September.
Okay, yeah, before it gets cold.
Yeah, we have to do it before, I think it's before June 1st, something like that, or
Okay.
June 10th.
And then there's a requirement that is submitted to me,
Okay.
and then I'd have to submit the dates and sign off to the state.
Okay, and then, so when it says the armed assailant drill may be discussion-based, obviously, we're not gonna announce that one, but that isn't always a leave the building drill. Is that the state's recommendation, that it can be not a leave the building drill, but you need to have some sort of discussion about it?
Mhm.
Is that what they're asking? Okay. And then when it says, because it's in bold, the remaining fire, I guess I'm confused about that last paragraph where it says the school may include students and first responders in all hazard response drills or activities as deemed appropriate. Then the remaining fire evacuation drill should be for each building by the building principal with the fire department. So is that the 6 drills or is that the 4 drills? I think that's what I'm confused. Does that make sense?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, so Trish and I, and I'd say most of the schools do this, but Trish and I definitely do this, we plan all of our drills with the safety officials,
Okay.
so they know exactly when we're doing all of our drills.
Okay.
So Trish and I can determine when the all hazard ones are, but it looks like it's in,
That's what I guess that's what I'm just, like, confused about.
the remaining fire evacuation drills should be for each building. By the building.
I'm wondering, is that
I think
the
it's-
6 drills, or is that, is the 4 is the all hazard drills, right? So is that first, that's confusing.
We might have to relook at that.
Well, later in the
I'm wondering if
memo,
they're talking
it talks
about,
about fire
because you
drills,
have
and we
more than
talked
one
about
building
that.
in the district?
Okay.
Or
I
if you
guess I'm
had,
just, but, like,
or if you had multiple
Yeah, we'll
buildings?
take a look.
Yeah, I guess I'm just confused by that.
It
So
might be a
I-
little bit redundant, actually.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out, like, because there's 4 and 6, and they're all bolded, which tells me their
Yep.
importance. So I'm like, okay, so there's 4 all hazard drills, but then there's 6 evacuation drills, but then there's nothing about specific fire drills, so I don't know.
Because that's the
They're called
evacuation.
evacuation.
Because now they're, so
Evacuations.
maybe we
Right,
just
that
take
might
out
be.
fire, or just say remaining evacuation.
Yeah, we'll take a look.
Okay.
We may have, like, missed that in the,
Yeah, I just
updating.
want
Yeah,
to
we'll
make
look
sure
at
it's
that.
clear.
Yeah, I think it's very wordy, it doesn't have to be so wordy either.
Okay. Awesome, thank you.
All right, so going back to the motion, are we ready to vote? All in favor?
Sure.
Do you know what you voted?
No.
Okay, so voting basically, so we're now doing everything in one memo, all the policies together, so we're voting for the, because I don't want you to vote if you don't know. Basically that we're accepting as a second reading and adopting the hazard or chemical safety one.
Yes.
We're just doing a first reading on that fire drill and the public participation one. So we'll bring that back, and then the second reading, which will also come back. on the
Tracking, yeah.
device. That's
I was
okay,
tracking
no
where
worries.
we're going with that, but I'm like, we're doing one vote for all of them?
yes.
No, I'm glad you
I like
asked.
that.
We
Appreciate
can't
that.
vote without knowing. All right, so all in favor?
Yes.
Any opposition? Or nothing? And then,
Motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn. Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? And do we have a non-public?
We do not.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yes, you too.
Enjoy. Thank you for everything. It's hard to believe it's already here, but
I
you're
know,
here.
oh my gosh. Happy birthday, Colleen. Thank you.
Today, happy birthday. Oh, that's why we have such a.
Oh, I feel like I am so behind and all.